through 2020, as well as 2020 through 2021. And a lot of the standards, I think, even though we're in different times, still apply. I would say, and it looks like first and foremost on both of these standards is ensuring a safe learning and working environment for students and staff. That has to take priority. And I don't think there's any compromise when it comes to safety of students and staff members within our campus. I do have, it looks like the second bullet on both of these is value the education of the whole child. And I'm curious what the district meant by the whole child when they put these in here. That to me just seems a little vague, and I just want to kind of figure out where the district was at when they put that line item in there.
Jody, did you want to comment on that?
I was going to say, I didn't know who wants to take that.
I can comment on that because we at the conference, they talked about the whole child, and it's a lot of the family involvement, mental health, like staying connected with the home life and every aspect of the child's life.
So Jody and I were here when they developed them, and it's exactly that, right? It's not just academic, it's social emotional learning, it's supporting the family, and the partnership with the family more important than, anything in regards to understanding the social emotional, where the student's at, and then also academically, the whole child.
And I think I can add to that too by saying it also, the discussion at that time included extracurricular, sports, music, drama, art, just making sure that we are educating and providing opportunities for that quote unquote whole child
And equity.
and equity.
Yeah, when you talk about co-curricular and extracurricular sports, band, choir, those are the things that bring our students to the table, I think, more than the academic side. And so I've always held value in those things. And so if that's a part of valuing the education of the whole child, then I would agree as well. I don't want to be the only one that talks tonight, so I'll reserve some of my other comments.
I'll just work the way from, I guess, my right to left. And so, Director Davis?
I would also say that the whole child is very important. I've seen some of the cuts that are on the table, and I've heard from a lot of community members that those extracurricular activities are very important for students. So keeping that as one of our values or our framework for budget guidelines, I believe, is very important. I think having more information on the 75th percentile in pay for all groups is important too, because I'm not sure.
What does that look like?
Yeah, what does that look like? And let's see. One of the other questions questions I have is about honoring the taxpayer investment in our infrastructure, facilities, grounds, technology, and other assets. And I'm curious about this because that comes from our levy funds, correct?
The capital funds, but we didn't run a capital levy last time.
Yeah, the current levy that passed would be for operations, so not necessarily capital funds.
So then this one, we don't really have that available.
No, it doesn't really apply. I mean, the way it applies right now is that we have currently borrowed from that capital funds bucket.
Okay.
And that has to be repaid.
Okay.
With interest.
I think to your point, though, it doesn't just have to be honoring the taxpayers' investment when it comes to our capital resources, but the community put their trust in us when they passed the levy. And whether that's a capital levy or an operations levy, I think we have to honor the community with that. And so I would still say that's important within the future of the district.
Yeah, we have to understand that some of these standards again have dates to them, and there was a different conversation at that time. So I agree with Director Krebs. That's when you're talking about levies, you can look at this point as all inclusive. As we need to be good stewards.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
I think just to interject a little bit, because you're really spot on the intent that the board had at this time. It also had to do with we take care of our facilities, so we're honoring and taking care of our facilities with those funds that are allocated to us through our taxpayers too. So their intent at that time too was about care and maintenance.
Perfect. Director Hoagie?
I think I would just be reiterating what everybody else has said.
That's okay.
I think it's the safe learning and working environment and the whole child and equity need to be top of our minds when we work through all this.
Do we have Director Michael online?
Is Director Michael?
Hello.
Is she listed there as a participant or a panelist?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but you're really quiet.
Okay.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, probably.
I heard something.
You're right behind me.
Should I try again?
While we're waiting, I'll one bullet point that I'm sure everybody can agree on, but wasn't brought up, was ensure that budget decisions are student-focused, practical, sustainable, and timely. I think that first point, student-focused, has to be at the forefront of all of these bullet points. And every decision we make impacts the student in some way or another. And so looking at it through that lens first, before decisions are made, I think is important.
Agreed. Director Michael, can you say hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, delightful. Hello.
Yeah.
So, Director Krebs, you took the words right out of my mouth. I think I would agree with a lot of the conversation that's been had so far, but I think making sure that our decisions are really student-centered is really important. We're here to educate kids. I do agree with the piece on educating the whole child when we're talking about providing that full kind of rich educational environment that includes both classroom activities and outside the classroom activities. Those are often the things that connect kids to school and keep them motivated. Like many of our, I guess my fellow board members, I've heard a lot from community folks about how important that is to them. Would echo the question on the 75th percentile in pay for all the groups. But I like having the student-focused piece up front.
Thank you. Representative Bloom.
All right, I'm going to the whole child idea, especially so I've been speaking with my peers about this, over the past week or so, maybe a little bit beyond that. And there's a lot of anxiety in terms of what could possibly get cut in terms of extracurricular, opportunities, athletics. And at the end of the day, I don't think very many students come to school for school. They come for the connections and they come for kind of the opportunities that are adjacent to that in terms of their extracurriculars, their athletics, and the things that include them in the broader academic community and the environment that their school cultivates. And so I think that generally maintaining that whole child vision and outlook is paramount to future success, beyond the, current budget situation. I think straying away from that could be, could have some pretty severe ramifications. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Faria.
Not so much of credit, but
It's okay.
Full chat. So I've had a lot of students I know, like one of the only reasons they come to school is because of sports or other academic activities. So that is very important for a lot of kids to even participate in school and get that education. And also, so something else. The last point is increased financial stability by reaching 8% fund balance policy. That seems a little dated in our crisis, or like kind of maybe we need a different policy just to survive. I don't know exactly what.
Well, it's a policy. It's a goal that the board has put out there to have a fund balance of 8% for emergencies. And we're definitely encroaching in that territory. So that we're already well within that fund balance. Yeah. For me, I would ditto everything that you guys say. I have basically three criteria that I see almost as almost non-negotiable, which is safety, or the education of our students, or academics, and then what you're talking about, James, and everybody else is talking about, which is that whole child part of it, where maybe it's sports, maybe it's drama, maybe it's your debate club. It's the things that you put your passions into, that the kids really develop their passions into, and so agreed or ditto on a lot of the input that I'm getting from the community is, that's what much of the concern, or where most of the concern is at, is nobody's ever said, hey, you cannot cut math, right? They haven't come to me for that yet, but they want the academics, and they want the full school experience, and that's that social and whole child part of it. So I know I'm just repeating a lot of what you're saying, but it's also repeating some form of a consensus on what we all feel is important.
First of all, I want to say good job, Jimmy. I was like, he was speaking, and I was like, yeah, I know this kid. I worked with him at Tallulah, so I'm so happy to see you here. And then I also wanted to say that I think if that was ever option that was made, we would just see a decrease in enrollment too. People would just simply leave the district if those types of activities were ever cut. So that would just happen in a heartbeat.
Yeah. There's. I mean, when you're talking sports, there's a lot of very talented, and I'm just using sports as an example because there's many co-curricular activities, but there's a lot of talented families and children out there, students out there that are banking on scholarships. Mm-hmm. And if we were to even go down that road, we would lose a lot of.
Some kids keep their grades up so that they can play.
Yeah.
So that's an incentive for some students too.
Yeah.
So.
Dr. Robbins?
So I support everything that has been said. I want to point out just a different priority. Actually, we talked about this to some degree, the whole notion of honoring the taxpayers' investment in our infrastructure, facilities, grounds, technology, and other assets. We don't want to go through any sort of process without being to address the fact that some of our classrooms are either too hot or too cold, and folks are leaving doors open because it's hot, because it's too hot in the spring or in the summer, and sometimes in the fall. We don't want to have a situation where students say we endure our building instead of thrive in it. We don't want that. So as we look through this, we need to make sure, as we go through this process, we need to make sure that we are putting things in place to keep taking care of our buildings. Our buildings are aging. We have boilers that are at the end of life. We have roofs that are at the end of life, and we need to make sure that we don't make decisions that make that situation worse.
There was a question that came up a couple times on, and this may go back to when these standards were created, but to strive for the 75th percentile in pay for all groups using a defined list of comparator districts. I know that many of us weren't here at that time, so maybe Lori or Jody, could you fill us in a little bit on what you recall of the thinking during that time for that particular bullet point, which is on all the sections here?
Right. So initially, when these were developed, we had gone through a period of time where there was reductions, and we were trying to get kind of back up to some kind of standard to also be competitive with our salaries and make sure that we retained our staff. So there was the discussion at that time, and Lori, chime in anytime because I'm digging back a little deep. The discussion at that time was to create a percentile where there was some equity, and we were also meeting the kind of making sure that we were being competitive in the market and paying our employees at wages that were similar to our surrounding districts.
And that was for all union groups. So union groups were, and still are, some are not.
Okay.
So it was with all union groups, not just one or two.
Working to set that standard across the board.
And sir, if I may, there's something about locking us into the 75th percentile. I mean, I would hope that we would, while I know we have a difficult path ahead of us, we want to make sure that our salaries are competitive so that folks will want to be here. So there's something, I know that in your discussions you'll talk about this, but I don't know that while we have to attend to these challenges now, I don't know that limiting ourselves to the 75th percentile is going to help us be competitive with our neighboring districts.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think what we or I was really driving for is the intent. So I think I understand that.
Yep. But so at the time, like the intent was just to make sure we're competitive. Just I would hope the board would just be thoughtful about this, because the question remains, is topping out the 75th percentile competitive?
Right. Well, it may have been then.
It may have been then.
Yeah. Okay. Any more comments from the board now that you've had a chance to think about it, or even from our leadership team we'd accept your thoughts as well.
Sorry, I was looking at my phone, trying to find a picture a screenshot I took, I think almost a year ago. But we were talking about maintaining our facilities, and Dr. Robbins, you were talking about the importance of it. And I just want to read something. It says, research shows a positive relationship exists between school conditions and student achievement. Facility condition may have a stronger effect on student performance than the influences of family background, socioeconomic status, school attendance, and behavior combined. Students are more likely to prosper when their environment is conducive of learning. Well-designed facilities send a powerful message to kids about the importance of community places on education. So I read that a year ago, and it hit me big time. Because it was during a tour. We were taking a tour. The board was of all the schools, and we would do a board meeting in each school. And some of the schools that we attended, we would walk around before the board meeting. And obviously, we would walk through schools that don't have doors, have fake walls, just conditions weren't conducive of learning. And so to keep that a priority, even when maybe budget restrictions exist, we can't keep putting that on the back burner just because maybe we don't have the finances right now. We have to keep bringing it to the forefront. And I think every opportunity we have to improve our schools, will benefit our students, and not only our students, but our staff teaching in those schools. I got to imagine that better building conditions will increase the ability of our staff to teach effectively as well. So I just wanted to read that snapshot again during this meeting for the second time.
Just a few small anecdotes from my 12.5 years in the district now. So in my ceramics class, one of our sinks has been broken for about a week now. So after I'm done throwing on the wheel, I have to go to other sinks on the other side of the room. And that takes up some extra time. And then afterwards, I need to walk across the entire campus instead of walk in a 5-minute passing period right after that. So not ideal campus size, but our sink hasn't broken for over a week. I don't think that's today. Then additionally, in the courtyard where the ceramics class is, there's just some unusable benches that are like this angle just because of the aging of the terrain and the benches. And from elementary school, I remember one time our counselors are situated in the storage deposits. So one of my counselors' entire desk is covered in a pipe broke. So there's a couple small anecdotes.
Thanks.
So prioritizing and the stats you shared were very interesting.
Perfect.
So I guess I'd like to chime in with one more thought as well, as we're looking at this, and I haven't had an opportunity to really wordsmith. But looking at some of the things, I wonder if we are stating our intention clearly about, I think one of the goals is district resources are aligned to student learning and strategic priorities. And are we expressing strongly enough, I guess, our commitment to student achievement and student learning, and that all kids can learn, and we're committed to putting our budget priorities there? I mean, I feel like that's our first mission. Safety contributes to that. Educating the whole child contributes to that. It gets kids to buy in, and especially that in middle school, high school age, to be there. But I think one of the things I'd like to see us think about expressing is making sure that that academic piece is also there.
Agreed. That's well said. Thank you.
If I can comment on the academic piece, I'm looking at this priority 3, focus financial and human resources on programs and policies that directly support the district mission, vision, and strategic directions. And then I look at goal 3.5 from our summary of priorities and goals. Each school and the district meet or exceed federal and state performance requirements. We have a couple of programs in our district that far exceed district and state averages in achievement. And in order to scale up those programs, there will be some level of cost. But some of these programs are the actual gems of our district. And we just need to be prepared to start growing those programs. I mean, we have one program where the kids exceed at levels that pretty much, they exceed at levels that are higher than most of Snohomish County. That's a program that we need to grow. So we just need to be thoughtful of that as we go through this, so that in the foreseeable future, we can think about growing our programs that are very, very successful.
Yeah, thank you. Lisa, I keep on forgetting about you. Please.
Absolutely. So I just double checked some numbers with Mr. Dennis in the back of the room. And when we were talking with legislators, we estimated somewhere between $48 and $50 million of immediate facility needs that we don't have the funding for. And I don't recall this because I don't have all of the history in the district, but when is the last time that we passed a bond?
2006.
Okay. So 17 years ago, we passed a bond for facilities, and
Bill Getchell.
really hard for us to continue to maintain effective facilities with all the things that we're talking about for safety and security. Because some of the things that were on that list, it's roofs, it's boilers, it's alarm systems, it's cameras, it's fencing.
Fire alarm panels.
Oh, absolutely, and the list goes on and on, but we estimated somewhere between 48 and 50 million. So I just wanted to bring that up to really put some numbers behind the conversation of what do our facilities need, and that's before we even take a look at some of our campuses that may just need to be rebuilt.
That's what I was just gonna say, and that's not even rebuilding and
No.
adding anything new.
Right.
And then I think we also failed a bond between 2006 and now.
We did.
Maybe 2016.
Yes,
Something like
that is
that.
correct.
I was gonna say, like, I don't think we're at a level where that's necessarily feasible. As a bond.
And statewide, it is true that bonds have not been passing.
Well, don't we usually just go for bonds every 20 years? That's the typical. That's what I heard. For the
In terms of every 20 years, I know that it seems like that's the average when they actually pass, quite frankly.
right. That's just like trying for it.
But folks have been putting bonds to their voters, and they just haven't been passing.
I think the community has been saying for years that we keep putting Band-Aids on our buildings, and I think safety has been a huge. What can I say? The safety of our children has not been a community divisive topic. I think everybody in the community wants the students in our care to be safe. I think with the 58% yes on the levy, I think that says that the community wants our schools and our students to succeed, and our schools to have the resources that we need in order to see our students succeed. So I think there's some positive momentum for a bond. So I wouldn't put it completely off the table, but I think the community can get behind safety of our students. So
I would say to answer your question or your comment, my opinion is that when you're talking about community expectations, there's a desire for tangible results, something that you can see that is an improvement rather than all there's important stuff that you don't see, our HVAC systems, air handling, and all that. That's incredibly important, but also visibly seeing something tangible that is an improvement coming from their taxpayer dollars.
And I agree with that with some conversations that I've had with over periods of community members. They're like, well, they're giving them all this money, but I don't see anything with them. So that's a very, unfortunately, common perception.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we do, we focus on safety, like Dr. Cook is saying, focus on this.
So to kind of redirect us kind of back towards looking at these budget standards that were created years ago, and also, to some extent, they're a filter for how we do some of our thinking on how to move forward and provide a solution. Because I believe right now the district's done a pretty good job of painting the picture of what the problem is, but the feedback I'm getting is we got to get to the solution, and we got to get that out there sooner than later. I know that there's some good things going on. Now, I covered the board and the representatives, and Lisa, thank you for jumping in. Is there, from the leadership team, is there any input that you guys would like to, or insight that you'd like to share with the board when it comes to the conversation on the table?
If I can add one more thing. So one of the things, James, was very, very astute, the whole notion of folks are looking for outcomes. So and of course that also extends to our academic outcomes. So as we go through this process, we have to be mindful of people, because the achievement of a child correlates directly with the effectiveness of their teacher. So we need to make sure that we're thinking about this as we go through this process, because most of our budget is tied up in salary. But I think I would ask the board to be very thoughtful about cuts, because again, it is a kid's teacher and the effectiveness of that teacher that leads to outcomes.
I think the only thing that I would, and it's in here, just as a reminder though, on bullet 2, seeking equity over equality, and really making sure that all of our decisions we're looking at through a certain lens of framework to make sure that our students that are furthest from justice are really getting what they need to thrive, so that we can have a stronger system. Just we'll call out that.
Thank you, Bonnie. Director Michael, anything else?
No, I think that nothing more from me.
Okay, thank you.
What are next steps, Jody, after this work study? What's the expected outcome for you?
So I've collected the comments from everyone this evening, and we'll put together a draft and let the board take another look at it to make sure that it's on point, that it's tied to our strategic priorities and goals. And it may take a couple iterations, a couple drafts to look at before the board feels comfortable coming up with a document that could be used as the standards.
Thank you.
When could we expect a first draft? Next board meeting or
Before that.
Before that,
Before that, for sure.
we only have one board meeting in December. That's
right?
today.
December's the weird month.
Yeah.
So
It'll be relatively. I'm sorry, sir.
in a few days.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Can I add that one of the things I would like to see as a priority around like our budget standards is also about lobbying for more state funds too, in some way, because then having the community know that that's something that we're working towards is important to me, because we shouldn't have to depend so heavily on levies and bonds to ensure that our students are getting what they need. So if we could have that be a part of our priorities.
I think everybody in this room can get around what you just said, even the community members. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yep. And we do have there's some good work happening with the on the legislative side, and we do have an update on the agenda for the actual regular session meeting tonight on that, which will shed a little bit more light on some of the stuff that's been going on that you may not have information or updates on.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to conclude the work study, or do we have any more input questions? Obviously the goal is to have the board understand, and through this conversation, Jody kind of tally up the priorities or the sentiments of what we're thinking, what our thinking is, and bring that back to us. But if there's any last thoughts, now is a good time. Otherwise, I'll conclude the work study. All right, work study is concluded at 5:40, and we will start our regular session meeting at 6 o'clock. So there's about
recording stopped.
Thank you.
Of course, you gotta rearrange the furniture. These tables are actually staying here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Get my stuff up.
I think that,
Just came from there.
it's like, got a wealth of information. So, yeah, but I think that would be good.
One more.
So we went to American conference too. Legislative lunch.
Yes.